Hello and welcome to Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
At least 20 people were killed and more than 100 injured when an earthquake struck southwestern Pakistan, causing roofs and walls of mud brick homes to collapse on families as they slept.
The World Health Organization on Wednesday endorsed the RTS-AS01 malaria vaccine, the first against the mosquito-borne disease that kills more than 400,000 people a year, mostly African children.
And UN weather experts said there have been so many major storms in the Atlantic Ocean so far this year that the usual list of names given to them could well be exhausted.
And a Russian actress and director arrived at the International Space Station on Tuesday to begin a 12-day mission to make the first movie in orbit.
First in our news, at least 20 people were killed and more than 100 injured on Thursday when an earthquake struck southwestern Pakistan, causing roofs and walls of mud brick homes to collapse on families as they slept. Take a look. A one-year-old boy was among victims killed when a beam crashed on top of him in the darkness as the 5.9 magnitude quake jolted at least 6 cities and towns in Balochistan province. The worst affected area was the remote mountainous district of Harnai, where landslides blocked some roads, hampering rescue efforts. Authorities are also contending with phone and electricity outages after pylons were damaged. The quake caused electricity to fail in the area, with health staff working until dawn without lights in the district's poorly equipped government hospital. Hashmi, the top government official in Harnai district, said a rescue team had been dispatched to investigate reports that 15 coal miners were trapped in a mine on the outskirts of the town. It's common in Pakistan for miners to work at night when temperatures are cooler. Prime Minister Imran Khan, meanwhile, said he had ordered immediate assistance on an emergency basis to the affected region. The earthquake was felt in towns throughout Balochistan, which borders Afghanistan and Iran, including provincial capital Quetta, around 170 kilometers west of Harnai. The USGS initially said the shallow quake measured 5.7 before revising it up to a magnitude of 5.9. Pakistan straddles the boundary where the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates meet, making the country susceptible to earthquakes.
In other news, Spain's airport authority said clouds of thick ash from the erupting volcano on La Palma on Thursday forced the island's airport to close for the second time since the September 19 eruption. On Wednesday evening, local airline Binter had said it was canceling all flights in and out of La Palma, one of Spain's Canary Islands archipelago in the Atlantic, just off the northwestern coast of Africa. The airport was briefly shut on September 25 after a thick cloud of black ash forced airlines to cancel flights. Although it was reopened a day later, flights did not resume until September 29th. Now, the lives of thousands may have been devastated by the volcano's eruption on La Palma Island, but many are starting to dream of returning home and starting to rebuild. There is no legislation that prevents them from going back to their homes in the Aridane Valley, a fertile agricultural area that is home to 20,000 people that has borne the brunt of the eruption, with the lava destroying more than 1,000 buildings. Unlike Italy's Mount Etna or Mount Fuji in Japan, which have one central vent, the volcano on La Palma makes a new fissure each time it erupts, meaning it isn't possible to set up a clearly defined exclusion zone.
And meanwhile, take a look at these aerial images of flooding in a village in Hainan province. After heavy rains and images of emergency services helping locals through flooded streets. Take a look. Chinese state media said more than 30 people were taken to safety by firefighters. According to CGTN News, days of downpours have swollen a river section in Hushan Great Wall scenic spot in Quandianman Autonomous County, northeast China's Liaoning province, leaving 32 tourists stranded on October 4. Heavy rains have also lashed Pinglu County of North China's Shanxi province since the end of September. Landslides occurred because of incessant rains in mountainous areas, blocking several roads on Monday.
Meanwhile, firefighters battle against forest fires in Caminaga, a town in Argentina's province, Cordoba. No deaths or injuries have been reported so far. Watch this.
Es una zona, esta región del norte cordobés, con mucho combustible muy pesado, monte muy cerrado y muchas palmas y palmeras, que hace que realmente la tarea de extinción de incendios cada vez se dificulte más.
The fire started 5 days ago in 4 districts. The fire was controlled in Tulumba and Sobremonte, but active fires remained in Caminaga and San Pedro Norte, some 900 kilometers west of Buenos Aires. Hundreds of firefighters were deployed in the area. Fierce winds and dry, hot weather have helped rapidly spread the fire, according to firefighters.
Meanwhile, there have been so many major storms in the Atlantic Ocean so far this year that the usual list of names given to them could well be exhausted. That according to UN weather experts on Tuesday. The development follows 2020's record-breaking hurricane season, which saw 30 named tropical storms, including 9 names from the Greek alphabet. The devastating storms, Eta and Iota, were among them. Here's WMO spokesperson Claire Nolles.
The second consecutive year, it looks like we're going to run out of regular hurricane names. As you know, this is a perennial topic of interest among journalists. We have rotating lists of names which we use, and the Atlantic season in 2021 has been so active that we are on the verge of exhausting the regular list. We've just got to Victor, who's now dissipated without ever becoming a threat. The final list, final name on the list is Wanda, which at the moment shows no signs of forming, but we still have a few more weeks to the end of the hurricane season. Once that happens, we're going to switch to a new supplementary list. If you recall, last year in 2020, when we exhausted the list of names, we used the Greek alphabet. The WMO Hurricane Committee earlier this year met and agreed that for hurricane names which are used as an emergency warning, the Greek alphabet wasn't suitable. So we now have a supplementary list. The first name on that list is Adria, and then we will work our way, hopefully not too far through the list. Why is it so active, and why haven't we heard much about it? It has been a very, very active season. The US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration correctly predicted this would be the case at the start of the season. So it's been active in what we call accumulated cyclone energy, which is how we measure the energy from hurricanes. It hasn't been particularly devastating when you compare it to 2020 in terms of the big landfalling hurricanes. So we've had a lot of hurricanes churning away in the Atlantic. Relatively few of those have made landfall. The big exception to this is obviously Hurricane Ida, which stands out as the deadliest and most damaging storm.
Now, just to reiterate, if new names are needed before this year's Atlantic storm season ends, Ms. Nollis explained that a WMO Hurricane Committee had decided that Greek letters should not be used, but rather a supplementary list.
Floods, droughts, and other water-related hazards have increased because of climate change, the UN warned on Tuesday in an appeal for better management, monitoring, and forecasting of the dangers. In Geneva, WMO Secretary General Petteri Talas told reporters or journalists that climate change has been responsible for the 7% increase in global humidity levels. This has fueled devastating rainfall. Take a look.
Focusing on water, and most of the impacts of climate change they are felt through water, and we have published this report. This report is a joint venture, and we have already seen a change in the amount of water. There's been a drop of 1 centimeter per year during the past 20 years, and the biggest losses have been taking place in glaciers at Antarctica and Greenland, and also at the mountain glaciers. And the bad news from most recent IPCC report is that this melting is supposed to continue for the coming centuries, not only for the coming years or coming decades, but the coming centuries, because we have already been reaching high level of carbon dioxide. So it means that this problem doesn't go away. And according to our sister organization, FAO, there has been already 2 billion inhabitants of our planet, 1/4 of our planet, where people have been exposed to major water stress, and there's a lack of drinking water, and also lack of water for agriculture. And from our side, we are also monitoring the amount of disasters, and there has been a dramatic increase in the flooding events during the past 20 years, and that increase has been 134%. And we know that because of this current 1 degree warming of the 1.1 degree warming of the planet, we have more humidity in the atmosphere. We have 7% more humidity in the atmosphere because of the current warming, and that's also contributing to the flooding problems. And Asia has been the continent which has been mostly exposed to both the deaths and economic losses related to the flooding, and it's very much river flooding that we are talking about here. And we have also seen an increase in the amount of and duration of drought events. We have seen about 30% increase at the same time during the past 20 years, and this has been very much affecting Africa, and where both the observing systems and early warning services are perhaps the poorest, and the population growth in Africa is boosting this challenge.
And to the Middle East now, where a beach cleanup drive just recently was conducted in Manama, Bahrain. Here's Lorlyn Kalimlim, who will take us there.
Aiming for a healthier and more pleasant place to live, work, and play is one of the utmost goals of the Capital Governorate under its annual event, Manama Healthy City Program. Right now, we are here at the Jufair Beach for the beach cleanup drive. The Capital Governorate continues to encourage its community to maintain the cleanliness of the beaches and coastlines of the Kingdom of Bahrain. This is an annual event launched by the said governorate under the patronage of His Excellency Sheikh Hisham Al Khalifa.
So basically, Manama was awarded by WHO as a Manama Healthy City. This program was under umbrella of World Health Organization, and at the Capital Governorate, we were very keen to meet the standards that already assigned in the program. So part of the initiative is to save the environment and try to protect the environment in the capital. So we are very glad that one of the things that we should have is engaging the volunteers in our initiatives and activities, especially in the environment. In 2015, we launched a project called Green Capital Project. So Green Capital Project was basically to have initiatives to promote eco-friendly projects within the city. But we are at the Capital Governorate with the leadership of His Excellency, the Governor of Capital Governorate. We are very keen to develop the city in general and to raise the standard of living to the community. And one of the aspects is the community partnership. That's why here we are engaging with all the NGOs and volunteers from different nationalities to develop the standard of living in the kingdom and especially the capital government. We are in Bahrain, we have a lot of communities, but we all live in harmony. As you can see, the majority of volunteers, they are from different nationalities, and you see less Bahraini, but we treat them as one community. And I recommend and advise them to keep their environment safe and clean, because at the end, if they keep themselves clean and safe, everyone will be safe.
In support of Mr. Yusuf Yaqub Lori, Director of Information and Follow-up at the Capital Governorate, and in cooperation with Good Cause Bahrain Group, headed by Ms. Antoinette Avila. Various environmental and professional groups are among the volunteers and organizations seen in the event, from different nationalities and different ages.
Kami po sa Embahada ng Pilipinas dito sa bansang Bahrain ay nalulugod na makiisa sa 2021 Manama Healthy City Program. No? So ito po ay inorganisa ng Capital Governorate ng bansang Bahrain at ng Good Cause Group. No? So ilan po sa mga namumuno ng grupo na yan ay mga kababayan po natin o miyembro ng Filipino community dito sa Bahrain. At in fact, marami sa mga nag-participate ngayong hapon na ito ay mga kababayan po natin. No? Iba't ibang grupo, iba't ibang organisasyon ng ating Filipino community dito sa Bahrain. Kaya kami po ay nagagalak na makiisa at natutuwa po tayo na ipakita ang ating suporta sa lokal na pamahalaan ng Bahrain, lalong-lalo na po dito sa Capital Governorate. No? Nagagalak po tayo na makiisa sa pag-aadvokasya na panatiliin na malinis ang ating kapaligiran, ang ating mga dagat lalong-lalo na. At ang hinahangad po namin ay hindi lang sa makatulong sa paglilinis mismo, no, kundi makatulong din sa pagpapalaganap ng kaalaman, lalo na sa mga susunod na henerasyon. That's why the embassy is participating in these kinds of events. So we want to urge everybody to help keep our environment clean as much as possible. Throw your trash in the proper places and not just anywhere, especially not in the beaches, because it will affect our oceans and our environment. No?
My name is Quidi Galarpe. I'm representing the Naval Support Activity Bahrain. I'm originally from the Philippines, but I am from California. I'm representing the good cause to be part of this environmental cleanup of Bahrain, and we do this in order to give back to the community and build up community relations.
Ako si Miss Alma de Vera Ramos. Ang organization namin is Philippine Bahrain Caregiver Society in cooperation with Al-Wali Training and Services dito sa Bahrain. Ang advocacy namin is we rise by lifting others, but yung goal namin is to spread or enhance ang caregiving as a course para sa ating kababayan dito sa bansang Bahrain, para ma-uplift din o maitaas ang mga kabuhayan nila. Nakipag-coordinate din kami dito sa Filipino Club para makatulong dito sa clean drive, dahil gusto nating ang environment natin ay malinis para sa ating health health advocacy din natin. Para pagka mas malinis, mas masarap mabuhay sa malinis na environment.
Joining a cleanup drive advocacy is very important, either you are in your own country or not, since this is a worldwide concern. So to have a better place to live, a healthier and a more pleasant atmosphere for the next generation, keep maintaining a community clean as one of your top priorities. This is Lorlin Kalimlim, your Eagle News correspondent from Bahrain, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you. Now, Switzerland is up for an intensified vaccination campaign. That is according to our EBC correspondent there. We have Man Glauser joining us live. Man, what do you have for us?
Yes, you're right, CJ. In Switzerland, the number of COVID-19 cases is currently decreasing in its overall. However, knowing that it's one of the European countries with the lowest vaccination rate and knowing that Delta variant is very contagious, the Confederation prefers to take cautions before the upcoming cold months to avoid overwhelming hospitals. For that, the country plans to intensify its vaccination campaign. The purpose of this campaign is to convince in many ways the rest of the 43% of the population not yet vaccinated to get vaccinated. This is composed of 4 strategic actions. The first one would be to hold a national vaccination week with information events aiming to reassure indecisive people to get vaccinated by highlighting the benefits of vaccination for the population as a whole. The second one would be to provide 170 additional vaccination buses and other mobile units to crowded places such as village squares, workplaces, football pitches, university campuses, and shopping centers to ease the access to vaccines for several weeks. Knowing that there are still indecisive people due to their unanswered questions, the third one would be to provide for several weeks as well around 1,700 special advisors throughout all the country so that they can talk individually with them either by phone, on social media channels, or even in person. It would be an offered service which supplements to the advice already available from health professionals. And the last one would be to directly involve the entire population in this campaign by exhorting them to convince their unvaccinated acquaintances and other people to get vaccinated. In exchange, they would be rewarded by their respective canton with a 50 Swiss francs voucher for each newly vaccinated person. Back to you, CJ.
Well, thanks, Mea. And it looks like Switzerland is really ready to take all possible actions, to get the most people vaccinated. But how much does this campaign cost, and why is there a need to push for such investment or such project?
Well, CJ, the Federal Council thinks that this campaign, which would cost a maximum of 150 million Swiss francs, is a worthwhile investment compared to the current testing cost of around 50 million Swiss francs a week, because the more the vaccinations there are, the less hospitalizations there are going to be. And it's the most efficient way to end this pandemic. Back to you, CJ.
Well, thank you for your story there. Please do take care and tell us more if you have any more developments happening there in Switzerland.
Yes, take care as well, CJ. Thank you for having me as well. I'm Anne Glauser reporting from the Geneva, Switzerland Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thanks, Man. And Eagle News, we'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Araw-araw sa panahon ngayon, may daming tanong kailangan ng tugon. Nandito si Ali at si Papi na rin, ang smart at pretty nanay, ang siglaban ng kwentuhan. Ang sigaw ng Pinoy Nation, information and education. Ating salamin, ipakita natin anong sagot sa problema natin. Ano sa palagay nyo? Ano sa palagay nyo? Ano sa palagay nyo?
Ano sa palagay nyo? Abangan! Simula October 18, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga. Mapapanood sa Net25 TV, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. Mapapakinggan din sa DZEC 1062 at Eagle FM 95.5.
Welcome back. The World Health Organization on Wednesday endorsed the RTS-AS01 malaria vaccine, the first against the mosquito-borne disease that kills more than 400,000 people a year, mostly African children. Let's listen in.
But this long-awaited malaria vaccine is a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. Using this vaccine in addition to existing tools to prevent malaria could save tens of thousands of young lives each year. As some of you may know, I started my career as a malaria researcher, and I longed for the day that we would have an effective vaccine against this ancient and terrible disease. And today is that day, an historic day. This vaccine is a gift to the world, but its value will be felt most in Africa.
We've long hoped for an effective malaria vaccine, and now for the first time ever, we have such a vaccine recommended for widespread use. Today's recommendation therefore offers a glimmer of hope for the continent. We expect many more African children will be protected from malaria and grow into healthy and productive adults.
Many vaccines exist against viruses and bacteria, but this was the first time that the WHO recommended for broad use a vaccine against a human parasite. The vaccine acts against Plasmodium falciparum, one of 5 parasite species and the most deadly. Malaria symptoms include fever, headaches, and muscle pain, then cycles of chills, fever, and sweating. Every 2 minutes, a child dies of malaria, according to the World Health Organization.
In other COVID news, Australian medical tech manufacturer Athome said it had recalled almost 200,000 at-home COVID-19 tests in the United States over an increased chance of false positives. Athome's rapid at-home coronavirus test last year became the first to receive emergency use authorization in the U.S. Now, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued an alert Tuesday over the potential for false positive results with certain lots of the Athome COVID-19 home test due to a recently identified manufacturing issue. Negative results do not appear to be affected by the manufacturing issue, the statement, however, said. Now, a spokesperson for the company told AFP that 195,000 of the 3.5 million tests shipped to the United States had been affected. Among them were tests provided to the Department of Defense for distribution to community health programs. In a statement dated October 1st, the company said the voluntary recall was ordered after false positive results were reported in some product batches at higher rates than expected. Founder Sean Parsons apologized for the entire company and for the stress or difficulties people may have experienced due to a false positive result. The firm said it had identified the cause of the issue and implemented additional controls and had resumed distributing the tests to U.S. retailers.
Meanwhile, Sweden's Public Health Agency on Wednesday recommended a temporary halt to the use of the Moderna vaccine among young adults, citing concerns over rare side effects to the heart. Neighboring Norway and Denmark also on Wednesday reiterated that Moderna's vaccine was not recommended for under 18s. Sweden's health agency said the suspension concerned anyone born after 1991 and should initially be enforced until December 1, explaining that it had received evidence of an increased risk of side effects such as inflammation of the heart muscle or myocarditis and inflammation of the pericardium or pericarditis. In Denmark, the vaccination program for those aged 12 to 17 currently only offers Pfizer-BioNTech's Comirnaty vaccine, but the country's health authority said Wednesday this practice would be formalized. The European Medicines Agency authorized the emergency use of Moderna's COVID vaccine for teens in July.
The World Health Organization's COVID-19 chief warned Tuesday, we are not out of the woods in the fight against the pandemic, even if many people thought it was nearly over. Maria van Kerkhove, the technical lead for WHO's COVID-19, said last week 3.1 million known new cases were reported to the UN Health Agency and 54,000 more deaths, though the true numbers would be so much higher. Take a look.
Trends. I need to balance my answer here. I think, we're very much in the middle of this pandemic still, unfortunately. I know all of us want to be out of this, but we're not quite there yet. We are seeing some positive trends in terms of reducing numbers of cases at the global level. We have seen some significant declines in all regions except Europe. In fact, in the last week, Europe had a 5% increase in cases. So the situation is still incredibly dynamic. And it's dynamic because we don't have control over this virus. And that's sort of the main factor of what we're seeing. Last week, 3.1 million cases reported to WHO, and that's of the ones that we know about. We still do not have good testing around the world. So there are probably significantly more cases that are occurring. But it's not transmitting at the same intensity in every country and in every city. And I know some people are watching are probably living in cities where transmission seems under control, societies are opening up again, but in many parts of the world, that's just not the case. In terms of deaths, we have seen, again, a reduction in deaths at the global level. By more than 54,000 people lost their lives last week. We do see reductions in deaths in all regions except the Americas and in Europe, where we've seen a slight increase again. Again, it's really fragile. So at a global level, positive trends in terms of reducing numbers of cases and reducing numbers of deaths, but we're not out of the woods.
The novel coronavirus has killed at least 4.8 million people since the outbreak emerged in China in December 2019. That tally is from official sources compiled by AFP. Now, Van Kerkhove said deaths now were largely happening among people who had not been vaccinated.
Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA Director General Eric Domingo, on Wednesday said 4 hospitals have been granted compassionate special permit as of Tuesday for antiviral drug molnupiravir, believed to be effective against COVID-19. In a televised Laging Handa briefing, Domingo said the Philippines is included in the multi-country clinical trial of the drug. Take a look.
So yung multi-country yung yung clinical trial ng molnupiravir kasama na rin dito sa Pilipinas. At yung nakita nila sa interim analysis nila is that it can prevent possibly 50% of people going into severe COVID and dying from COVID. So maganda. At bagamat hindi pa sila nag-a-apply ng EUA dito sa atin or kahit sa ibang bansa, mag-a-apply na daw sila sa US FDA very soon. Pero kahit wala pa yon, as an investigational drug, USChina, ito ay maaari na pong i-apply ng compassionate special permit dito sa atin sa Pilipinas. And in fact, as of yesterday, may 4 na hospitals na nag-grant ng compassionate special permit for this drug ng FDA. At yun nga, katulad na sinabi ko sa inyo, kapag naman po nag-apply sila, mabilis naman po yung na-actionan ng FDA. Opo, kailangan pa rin po nilang ituloy yung kanilang clinical trial. Kasi yung EUA, binibigay po yan based on interim, or ibig sabihin parang early partial results ng clinical trial. So kailangan i-complete po yung clinical trial para in the end, makakuha po sila ng full registration or certificate of product registration at maaari na po siyang i-market sa mga butika at saka sa mga retail outlets.
Molnupiravir was developed by Merck & Company, which explained it is likely to be effective against all known coronavirus variants, as it doesn't target the spike protein of the virus that differentiates the variants. The pharmaceutical company has not applied for the EUA, or emergency use authorization in the country, but it is soon to apply for one in the U.S.
The United Arab Emirates declared Wednesday that it has overcome the COVID crisis, recording its lowest number of infections this month since summer last year. Now, in a quote, I wanted to assure you all that our lives must go to normal, or go back to normal. That, according to the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, in footage published by the official WAM news agency. Now, the 7 Emirates of the UAE reported fewer than 200 new cases of COVID this month, the lowest figure since August last year. While life in the UAE has largely returned to normal, it retains strict rules on wearing masks and social distancing. Dubai is counting on the 6-month Expo 2020 Dubai, which opened on October 1st after a year of delay, to attract millions of visitors and boost its pandemic-hit economy. Heavily reliant on tourism, the Emirate was one of the first destinations to reopen its doors to travelers, accepting tourists in July last year, just a few months after the pandemic took hold. Neighboring Abu Dhabi has been more cautious, leaving it until December to reopen to visitors. Now, the UAE has so far recorded more than 737,000 cases of COVID-19, including 2,104 deaths. Eagle News will be back with more stories. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to the news. France announced Wednesday it will return its ambassador to Australia, ending a weeks-long diplomatic protest over Canberra's decision to scrap a submarine contract. Paris recalled its envoy on September 17, enraged at Australia's decision to tear up a landmark defense contract worth about $65 billion in favor of a U.S. offer. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said it was a good thing the French ambassador was returning to Canberra. Take a look.
In relation to the other matter that you raised, I welcome the fact that the ambassador will be returning to Australia. I think that's a good thing, and I think that was always going to happen after the consultations that were had, and look forward to taking the relationship forward. It's not a matter, frankly, of what additional things we're putting on our cooperation. We already have cooperation. See, the Australia-France relationship is bigger than a contract, and France's presence and significance and influence in the Indo-Pacific isn't about a contract. It's about the fact that they have an actual presence here in the Indo-Pacific, that they have a long-standing commitment and work with Australia across a whole range of different issues. I mean, we have other defence contracts with France. We have about $32 billion worth of contracts with not just French, but European contractors. So France already has a significant and long-standing role and future here, and we welcome that. So it's a matter of basically picking up on all the things we were working on and continuing on with them.
Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian told Parliament the ambassador would now return to Canberra with two objectives. He said Envoy Jean-Pierre Zebol would define our relationship with Australia in the future and firmly defend our interests as the two sides negotiate a settlement. Now, since the contracts for the 12 French attack submarines had already been signed, the severance deal could cost Australia hundreds of millions of dollars. The French foreign minister accused Australia of backstabbing and the United States of betrayal, calling the move reminiscent of the unilateralist attitude of former President Donald Trump. France's anger stemmed not only from the financial loss of the submarine deal, but also the shattering of an alliance with Australia that is saw or seen as a cornerstone of its Indo-Pacific security strategy.
Ça veut dire l'explication.
Meanwhile, the head of a French delegation of senators on Thursday called Taiwan a country during a visit to Taipei, risking fury from China, which has strongly protested against the trip. Alain Richard, a former defense minister, arrived on Wednesday for a 5-day visit despite repeated warnings from the Chinese embassy in Paris. In a speech after he was conferred a top medal of honor by President Tsai Ing-wen, Richard said Taiwan's de facto embassy in Paris has been doing a very good job in representing, quote, your country. France, like most countries, officially recognizes China, which claims self-ruled Taiwan as part of its territory. Beijing tries to keep the island isolated on the world stage and balks at the use of the name Taiwan or any reference to it as a country. It has ramped up pressure on Tsai's government since her 2016 election win and has aggressively tried to dissuade politicians from visiting in recent years. The Chinese embassy in Paris warned that the visit would damage the interests of China, Chinese-French relations, and the image of France in comments on its website. Beijing's ambassador wrote a letter to Richard in February saying the visit would clearly violate the One China principle and send the wrong signal to pro-independence forces in Taiwan. Taiwan's defense minister said that military tensions between the island and China are at their highest in 4 decades after around 150 Chinese warplanes, a record number, made incursions in Taiwan's air defense zone in recent days.
President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are planning to meet by video link before the end of the year. That, according to a senior U.S. official on Wednesday. The official cited news reports that Xi will not attend the upcoming G20 gathering of leaders in Rome, which would have been a natural place for Biden to arrange a bilateral. The virtual meeting was announced after U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met in Zurich with China's top diplomat Yang Jiechi. The senior official said those talks lasted 6 hours. During that meeting, Yang called for the two countries to work together, according to Chinese state-run news agency Xinhua. He said that Beijing attaches more importance to the positive remarks on China-U.S. relations made by Biden recently. Sullivan's trip continues an uptick in contact between Beijing and Washington as Biden argues for establishing guardrails for the growing contest between the two powers. Tension is rising over China's aggressive posture towards Taiwan, the U.S. decision to sell nuclear-powered submarines to Australia, trade disputes, and human rights violations against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Yang reiterated China's position on Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and others to Sullivan, and urged the U.S. to stop using the above issues to interfere in China's internal affairs. Now, Biden, who has known Xi for years, has held 2 phone calls with the Chinese leader since becoming president. The second, lasting 90 minutes, took place last month.
In other news, back here in the country, Vice President Leni Robredo announced that she would run for president in next year's election. In a Facebook Live on her official page, Robredo said her heart is focused and she is decided, after much reflection, to go for the highest post of the land. Take a look.
Lalaban ako. Lalaban tayo. Inihahain ko ang aking sarili bilang kandidato sa pagkapangulo sa halalan ng 2022. Tatalunin natin ang luma at bulok na klase ng politika. Ibabalik natin sa kamay ng karaniwang Pilipino ang kakayahang magdala ng pagbabago. Panata ko ngayon, ibubuhos ko ng buong-buo ang aking lakas. Hindi lang hanggang sa halalan, kundi hanggang sa mga natitirang araw ko. Para ipaglaban ang Pilipinas ng ating mga pangarap.
Now, Robredo has been under pressure from supporters and opposition groups to join the 2022 presidential race, but she has been well behind the frontrunners and opinion polls. Analysts say the even-tempered former congresswoman could struggle. Her decision comes after her nemesis, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., said Tuesday he would run for the top job. Robredo narrowly defeated Marcos Jr. for the nation's second highest official or second highest office back in 2016.
Staying in the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte on Wednesday night rejected calls to withdraw a memorandum barring officials and employees of the executive branch from attending a series of Senate Blue Ribbon Committee probes into the government's handling of COVID-19 response funds. He said only the Supreme Court could decide on whether the memo is unconstitutional, as some sectors believe. Watch this.
That's why I want them to go to the Supreme Court. Gusto kong makita ng footage ng behavior nila during. I want it recorded in history. It's yung pangyayari sa Senate and how they behave badly. Gusto kong dalhin nila sa sa Korte Suprema. So itong nila, withdraw nila yung order ko. Yung prohibiting people from the executive department from testifying. There ain't no way that I will withdraw it. You can do your worst and I will do mine. Kayo ang nag-umpisa nito. So, which goes to show that you have forgotten. Nakalimutan ninyo ang purpose ninyo sa trabaho ninyo sa buhay. At hindi ko tatanggapin yan. At huwag ninyo akong tataktakutin yung mga tao ko kasi ang pinakamalayo ninyo sa totoo lang i-contempt ninyo. You cite them in contempt of the Senate.
At ang sabi ng Korte Suprema, kung ang investigasyon ay
To the U.S., President Joe Biden, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and a string of heavyweight industrial leaders lined up to warn of catastrophic fallout from a U.S. default if Congress doesn't stop squabbling and extend the national debt ceiling. Take a look.
Undermine this. So let's vote and end this mess today. That's the only way to eliminate the uncertainty and risk that will remain for American families and our economy if we don't.
Second, let me be clear. This would be a catastrophic outcome, and this catastrophe would occur on two dimensions. The first relates to the financial system and macroeconomy. If Congress does not take action to raise the debt limit, Treasury's cash balance will reach an insufficient level to pay the nation's bills, and America would default for the first time in history.
Finally, in our news, a Russian actress and director arrived at the International Space Station on Tuesday to begin a 12-day mission to make the first movie in orbit. The Russian crew is set to beat a Hollywood project that was announced last year by Mission Impossible star Tom Cruise, NASA, and Elon Musk's SpaceX. Actress Yulia Peresild, 37, and film director Klim Shipenko, 38, took off from the Russia-leased Baikonur Cosmodrome in ex-Soviet Kazakhstan as scheduled. The crew traveled in a Soyuz MS-19 spaceship to film scenes for the movie The Challenge. The movie's plot, which has been mostly kept under wraps along with its budget, centers around a female surgeon who is dispatched to the ISS to save a cosmonaut. Shkaplerov, 49, and the two Russian cosmonauts already aboard the ISS are said to have cameo roles in the film.
And her producer-director, Klim Shipenko.
That's some tongue
What a perk to be working in the film industry.
True.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. And we live in interesting times.
I'm falling for you. I'm falling just like I knew I would. I'm falling for you. Oh, baby. I'm falling for you.
Hey, everyone. We are Daydream. Please catch us on Letters and Music on air and online. This is happening on Saturday, October 9 from 1 to 2 p.m. Only here on Net 25. See ya!
Now I'm falling. Catch me now, I'm falling. Catch me now, I'm falling. Catch me now, I'm falling.
Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG. Ito ay nangangailangan ng patnubay at gabay ng magulang para sa mga batang manonood.
Sa iba pa nating mga balita, bumagsak ng 0.2% ang ekonomiya ng bansa sa unang quarter ng taong ito.
Last year po, nung nagtagilid yung negosyo namin, especially in the first quarter of 2020, we really thought na maghihinto talaga kami kasi nga all of the businesses started to stop sending payments to the extent that we need to pull some enormous cash from our own savings to send payroll to our employees.
Next year, the loss of income exceeds that of any previous recession over the last 100 years.
Anim po kaming magkakapatid. Ako po ang panganay na lalaki. Alam ko naman na hindi talaga madaling pag-aralin ang mga anim na anak sabay-sabay. Hindi ako nagkakamali, that time may 2 elementary, tapos may 2 high school, tapos may 2 college.